today we're going to talk mainly about scratch building and Formula One. So it's going to be unlike any of your previous episodes. I was lucky enough to actually model the Lotus 72, the March 701, and the Ferrari 312 B2. Ultimately, that dream I had of people doing club racing with 1970s Formula One cars, it came to pass.
Hello, you are listening to Talking Out of Slot, the podcast about having fun with toy cars. And today is a bit different because we're going to be talking to an actual engineer. I've got a bit of paper that says I'm one, but I'm not really anymore. Anyway, it's Andy Rowland. Andy, welcome to Talking Out of Slot.
Thank you very much, Scott. Great to be here.
Oh, thank you. For those who maybe don't know you, I'll make the very briefest of introductions, then I'll ask you to kind of fill in the considerable blank. I know you, as I said to you the other day, you're famous to me because of the Polycar Grand Prix cars, because you were involved in engineering the what I'd like to call the gearbox or the drivetrain for that car. How did you get into, before we come to that, and I'm sure we will, how did you get into slot cars in the first place, and what's your background?
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you a little bit of a potted history, but I just wanted to say that the first thing is that today we're going to talk mainly about scratch building and Formula One. So it's going to be unlike any of your previous episodes.
What? No rallying, There are people.
No rally cars. I think I only have about 5 cars with mud guards in my whole collection. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's. I know there are at least one. There is at least one person who plays buzzword bingo, and so no rallying today, guys. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah. So, well, I guess it all started in about 1980. Christmas set. My dad came home with a Christmas set. Now, I grew up in kind of quite a unique situation where we didn't have a TV, and everyone of my generation grew up with a TV, and so I had no access to motorsport. I had no idea that any of that was going on. And then suddenly, my dad came home at Christmas with this big set. It was the kind of extended, that asymmetrical figure of 8 thing. Yeah. And of course, it had a Lotus 77 and a March 240 in it, the 240, the 6-wheeler. Right. Mm-hmm. And, that's really what kind of ignited my passion for those cars. So I played a fair bit with it. I had I have a brother who's 8 years older than me, and he was obviously much better, and his mates were much better. So I never really got into it until I was about 13. And I actually sold the whole set. I, extended it a bit and all that, as you do. Yeah. I sold it to a friend of mine for £5. Like when you're 13, £5 feels like a lot. Obviously now I massively regret it. But I was just starting to get into motorsport at that time as well, reading Autosport. Again, didn't have a telly, so I couldn't watch the Grand Prix. But a friend of mine, his dad took us to the 1986 qualifying for Brands Hatch.
Right. Uh-huh.
So I met, Nigel Mansell, saw Piquet, Senna, all those big names were there. And it was a kind of just a baptism of fire for me. And I remember sitting on the inside of Druids and just going, oh my God, this is just unbelievable. This is unbelievable. And I've been hooked on Formula One ever since, really. It's just never left me, that thrill, that excitement.
Well, that is quite an indoctrination, to be fair. Yeah, I mean, was that the year that Lafitte had his crash at the start? Because
I don't think so. I think it was the year that Mansell won for the first time the British Grand Prix. It was the last time that Grand Prix was at Brands as well.
Okay, well, I remember there was one of them. I was at the time I used to be able to get press passes just because you knew people, and at the time the press pass got you basically anywhere. So me and my mate were sat behind the Armco just outside the first corner, which was pretty awesome when all these cars were coming away. And then there was a pile up, and I remember Lafitte ended up he crashed and broke his legs. But it was kind of, this is maybe not... Well, at first it was, this is a great place to watch. And then it was, maybe this isn't a great place to watch.
It's dangerous in those days. You probably didn't have all the catch fencing and stuff.
No,
right?
No, it literally, I think from memory it was a double layer Armco. That was it. And until we didn't know better. It's like all the old rallying videos I love. See, you got rallying in. all the old rallying videos I love to watch, where the crowds are sort of lining the stages, and at the time we thought that's absolutely fine. Now you think, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Anyway,
Right.
sorry. Back.
Right.
So
Yeah.
having
So,
started with that induction, what did you sort of rushed home and started building your own Williams or
so
something?
well, I did. I started to build, but really models, static models. I
Mm.
wasn't really doing scale electrics at that point. Like I sold this kit to my friend. We had some great races at the point that I sold it. Ironically,
Hmm.
um, but it was all rug racing, on the carpet, as kids do. Anyway, 11 years later, I was 24 years old, and I had a girlfriend. I was still into Formula One, and she bought me the Hill Schumacher
Ah.
Formula
Mhm.
One scale electric set. When you're 24, that's kind of what your girlfriend does for you. So that was kind of fun. And I, I'm from Hornchurch in the East Edge of London,
Mhm.
Essex Edge, and there used to be a model shop in Hornchurch, the Hornchurch Model Shop near the station there, and they used to sell loads of scale electrics, but they also had like loads of old scale electrics. So I remember about that time that I had that new set. I went in there and I bought a couple of the so-called Formula Junior, the 1.5 liter, those really old,
Mm.
flimsy little cars that are always popping up on Slot Forum, people doing interesting things with them. I bought a couple of those because I kind of quite liked those, and I bought Roger Gillam's book. It was the fourth edition, the one that Adrian has
Yeah.
taken over, and um, so I bought that and I poured over that for hours. And, I was quite interested in this idea of collecting, but nothing really happened. I was 24. I was kind of, working hard, girlfriend, all that stuff until about 2007. In 2007, I mean, 2000, still 18 years ago, this.
Yeah.
In 2007, I had a life changing event and it was incredibly sad. But the point was that I think it's a kind of thing that some people do. I went into a sort of regression and I got interested in all my old toys. So I got all the Lego out the loft from my dad, and of course I got the Scalextric stuff out. And I got Roger's book out, and I got interested in that. And at the time, eBay was quite new, and suddenly you had this kind of access to the world.
Mm.
And so I started to buy all these old models, starting with the March 240 and the Lotus 77. I wanted those cars back.
Yeah.
And it had to be Formula One. So I went through and I basically collected all of the Formula One cars from the very start of this is Scalextric, obviously the brand Scalextric particularly. I was aware there were other brands, but I was particularly interested in the Scalextric for my own interest.
Yeah.
And basically I collected the 47 Formula One cars from the inception up to 1980. So I became a bit of a collector. But what I didn't do was go into all of the liveries. There are people out there that get like every single one, all the different liveries. Sometimes, like on the Lotus, like the only thing that changes is the driver's helmet, and
Mm.
everyone's got all the cut. I didn't do that. I stopped. But um, that was quite a nice kind of therapeutic hobby, and I wasn't aware of like slot forum and real slot racing. I had no idea that any of that was really, really happening. Now, of course, at the time I was living in Umbria because my wife is Italian, hence the Conti of Conti Roland. You might sometimes hear me refer to by Pedro, for example,
Indeed.
as
Yes.
Conti Roland. So
Yeah.
anyway, we lived in Italy. We're architects, and we ran our own practice there. And one day we bumped into this chap called Graham Lane. And Graham Lane, he lived actually about 15 miles up the road. All the years that I'd been there, I had no idea. And met him. He was an estate agent. He was selling buildings to expats, and I was restoring buildings for expats. And so we had an obvious kind of business synergy there. Anyway, a mutual friend put us together, and he started to tell me about all the things he was doing with slot cars, with Scalextrics.
Mm.
And he went on for hours and hours. I mean, Graham's got so much passion about this stuff. And, he explained that he was running these events called Mini Mille, which is the mini 1,000 miles. And he was getting people from all over the world. There were Americans coming in. Alan Wakefield came in from
Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adrian Norman came. And he ran these big events, and of course I got involved in that. But I'd already been collecting, so it was like a weird synergy where I just went, Graham, this is so weird, mate. Anyway, a big shout out to Graham. I hope you're well, mate, and looking forward to seeing you if you're listening. So be great to catch up again. So through that, I really got into it. I started to understand about Slot Forum. I started to go to local Italian club racing with Graham, and we had lots of laughs, lots of fun together. And I started to get back into modelling. So I bought the Osterero Lotus 79 kit. I don't know if you've seen that kit, but it's just absolutely fantastic. Osterero makes some exquisite kits. So I bought that and I made that and deckled it, and I got back into that kind of idea of modelling. And then with Slot Forum, I was quite excited by Slot Forum at the time. Lots of threads, lots of sort of interest, answering, responding, learning, reading. There was a wealth of information going back to 2003 on there. And I started to build this scratch-built Brabham BT46, the fan car.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a working fan in it. And it got a lot of interest. Everyone got really interested in that, excited about it. I put a skirt on the bottom, and I tried to demonstrate that it did actually suck. I made it so that it did actually have a negative pressure underneath. I mean, it was so minute. It was so minute.
I was going to say that's more than just modelling. That's
that's the model engineering bit that you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think the modern electric car even attempts to do that, but carry on, yeah.
No. Well, I tried it, but everyone pointed out that ultimately there's a slot, so you're never going to get suction.
Well, no, I'm very, very distant from that. One of my early slot cars was the 312T, and because they got modified a lot, and because of the time then ground effect was coming in, so I thought, how can I make my Ferrari ground effect? So eventually, with a lot of application of plasticine and bits of cut up paper, it acquired side skirts and a Venturi tunnel. I'm sure none of it, but I was happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? It's whatever takes your fancy.
I'm sorry to say, it's one of the things I think we get too hung up about when people say bringing kids or young people in. It's not about, there's no right way or wrong way. If you enjoy doing what you're doing with slot cars, if it's collecting, racing, chopping to bits, that's all that matters. Are you having fun? Anyway, carry on.
And it kind of snowballed. It started to take over my life. I mentioned that I was having a bad moment, and so it became a real therapy for me. I spent a lot of time, too much, if you ask my wife. Anyway,
best not to ask wives about slot car hobbies. Yeah.
Let's not get one of those on there. So the van wall, I started to build this van wall, and I got really, really obsessive about the scale kind of building. I put the tiniest motor I could find right in the back of it, and I built all of the interior and the space frame and all that sort of thing. I've got it here actually, just to for those who haven't seen that. It's quite a detailed piece. It's got steering and it's got suspension and all that sort of thing.
I think you do it a great disservice to say it's quite a detailed piece. I mean, it looks like somebody has taken one and shrunk a real car down. It's an amazing piece of modelling, and the fact that it works is even more amazing. Anyway, carry on.
So I built that and really enjoyed it, and I wanted to test some ideas. I'm not one for received wisdom, and so we'll come back to that when we talk about the Polycar Pod. And I wanted to test some ideas. So I went to Early Birds in 2011. It was really the first proper open event that I'd been to. And Early Birds at the time, there were 30 or 40 competitors. It was really, really quite an exciting thing. I met so many people that I, over the years become friends with. And I entered this thing, and of course it went terribly. And, as everyone had told me it would, and I'd ignored. And it just went absolutely dreadfully. But of course, the rules were you had to run it in one heat. So I ran the thing in one heat very slowly. Not that slowly. It just came off a lot, basically. And then I think I borrowed, another car to run in the other heats. But anyway, I won the concourse medal, and that really excited me. And that was like the first thing I'd ever won. And I was like, oh my God, this is really this is really great. This is what I can do. I'm not very good at racing, but I can build beautiful things, and I'm really interested in that. So that sort of set me off on one direction. And overall, I could see at that point what the whole scene was about. There were Group C, there were lots of all the Spanish Ninka, all those other cars. There were the classics. There was the Mosler come out and all that sort of thing. And I could see what the scene was all about. It was about going really, really fast, which wasn't really what I was about. But what I could see was there was no Formula One. And so I was like, well, I need it to be about Formula One, don't I? So how can I get into Formula One? And I'd done all that research on Slot Forum, and I'd met people all over the world that were into the Formula One. And I started to scratch build them. And got a little bit involved in some proxy racing, particularly in America for 60s cars and that sort of thing. But I was particularly interested in those 70s cars. My passion for the 70s Formula One cars is that everyone is absolutely unique. It's just like someone's just gone, what can I make it look like today?
Yeah.
And maybe there's Colin Chapman in the background just going, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. He's a real engineer, but everyone else is just giving it a try, And I just love that. I love the fact that the grids are so colourful, so different and exciting. So, yeah, I spent quite a lot of time scratch building really obscure 70s Formula One cars and going to these concourse events and winning some trophies and all that sort of thing. And that really is kind of the introduction to the polycar story, let's say. So,
and just to position this in time, what sort of time was this? What year was this?
This was the winter of 2011, 2012.
Okay.
And I know that because my son was born in 2012, and my wife was pregnant with my son, and it was winter, and we were in the middle of Umbria, and we lived on the top of quite a high hill, and it snowed. We got completely snowed in. It was about 1.8 meters of snow drift that we had outside. Couldn't get the car out. We were just completely stuck in the house. So obviously I'm an architect, so I draw in CAD all the time, mainly in 2D, but I can do some 3D as well. And I got really interested in, I was building these Better and Classic fiberglass shells. I don't know, you're aware of Better and Classic. And they do these very light, but quite handling bodies, let's say. And I was putting the Penelope Pit Lane metal brass chassis, the fold-up one underneath, and trying to make them as detailed as possible. So then I started to cut all the detail off and build lots of it. Anyway, so I thought, I'm sure I can do something better. I really didn't like the fact that the crown gear at the back was too big for the engine detail of the open Formula One cars. So I thought I can do better than this. So I got my computer out, and while we were snowed in for 2 weeks, I just worked full time to design, a Formula One car. Now I had some of those old scale model magazines from the 70s with Roger Taylor's beautiful drawings in.
Yeah.
And I had one of the Techno, and because my skills weren't very good with kind of drawing 3D at that time, the Techno only has 2 curves in it. Everything else is absolutely a box, I obviously just riveted that thing together from square bits. And it was very budget, I think, the Techno 2 at the time.
It probably looked quite modern, but yes.
Yeah, probably. So anyway, I designed that in the computer, and then I designed the Motopod, which was the forerunner of what became the Polycar Pod. There was on Slot Forum at the time. There was a thread called Complications, and it was basically all the old guys taking the mickey out of all the rubbish engineering that had happened in the 50s and 60s, and it was all really overcomplicated. There were these incredible motors and all these gear chains and all this stuff, and one of them had this little lazy axle, this transfer axle. It was slightly different to what I came up with, but it set my mind thinking. So from this kind of slightly Mickey-taking thread about old stuff, I formed this brand new idea. And of course, when you've got new technologies, back then you didn't have the plastics and the printing and all that stuff, the injection molding that you have today, then it probably wouldn't have worked. But today it could work. So anyway, I designed this thing, 3D printed it, I put it inside the Techno, and I took it to my friend Walter Marulli. He's an Italian ex-champion, essentially. He's got a lovely track in his basement, which we used to race on. And without showing him what was inside, because I wanted it to be secret, he tested the car. And he has a big, Formula One. He's a huge Formula One fan as well. And he just loved it. In fact, on YouTube, there are some, if you search for Brass Slot, with only 2 S's in the middle, so Brass Slot,
yep,
you will find there's some very early videos of him racing that car that night.
Wow.
And he couldn't believe that a Formula One car that small could perform in that way. He said, well, it's doing the same lap times as a Group C, which was a very popular, class at the time. So I was like, okay, well, this is great. And I was like, well, I'd like to produce this. And he said, well, I know Maurizio Ferrari. And so anyway, cut a long story short, I went to Gubbio. I made a little presentation for Maurizio, tried to convince him about Formula One, 1970s, showed him the car, showed him the video of it going really fast, because by then, these things were so fragile, the 3D printing was so fragile. By then, all the gear chain had kind of fallen apart, and none of it worked anymore. Anyway, he invited me to go to the factory, Galileo Engineering, meet his other partner, Maurizio Ghibertoni, and show us the car and talk about potentially, doing a deal. And we all went out for dinner that night and talked a bit more. Anyway, so I went to see the factory. We talked. We looked at the outside of the car. Again, I didn't open it up. I had no idea there was something different inside, because I was nervous. I was nervous without any kind of contract that, this, he was an idol. He was a big businessman. Who was I? I was nobody,
Yeah.
Anyway, through the day, I realised that he was an honourable person, and he's always been that to me. So, on his kitchen table in the evening after dinner, I opened it up.
Big reveal.
Yeah, big reveal. Showed him why it worked, and obviously, he's an electrical engineer, really, but obviously he's done a lot of engineering with slot cars. He looked at it, took one look at it, and he said, "We're going to do it." It was just like that. It was, within a second, he was all over it. Just
fantastic.
So brilliant. Yeah, we basically, we did the deal. Took quite a long time. He obviously, as an engineer, understanding production, working with his production team in China, he re-engineered it. So, the actual pod realistically is Maurizio, but the concept was mine. And it's quite unchanged in many ways. I had, I don't know if you've ever been inside one of these cars, Scott. I'm guessing not.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out on that.
No, yeah. If it works, I'll leave it alone. Leave it alone. Yeah.
Basically, on the lazy axle, between the motor and the rear axle, on the rear axle, there's a tiny spur gear. Okay, so the crown is moved away, and there's a special crown molding with the spur gear on it, and the spur engages with the spur, and the crown engages with the pinion. Okay, so it's a step down thing, and I had separated the 2 gears, so the crown was on one end and the spur on the other, and he put the 2 together, which was genius, because it was a lot less rotational force on that lazy axle. Anyway, he engineered it. We did a contract, and I was just so lucky to make that connection with Maurizio. He really believed in the project and pushed it. In the meantime, we had all kinds of problems. The economy wasn't great. Slot car racing wasn't great, but worked through that. And he's made a terrific amount of cars over the years. I was lucky enough to actually model the Lotus 72, the March 701, and the Ferrari 312 B2. So I'm incredibly proud of those. And ultimately, that dream I had of people doing club racing with 1970s Formula One cars, it came to pass. So, you just could not ask for more than that. And there are tens of thousands of these cars out there.
Which, I mean, I'm going to put words in your mouth, but I mean, it must be amazing to go from creating something on your kitchen table, metaphorically,
Yeah,
to seeing it now sort of on shelves all over the place. That's great. What and so in terms of those the cars that you selected to do, I think
yeah.
I can't remember which one the first one was. Was it the Ferrari? Was
The
it the
Lotus
first?
72.
Was it
Lotus.
Lotus?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
was that what was the process that you? So I'm not moving on from the grief of this. I'm just
No,
interested
no,
how
no, that's fine. I think,
having enabled to do proper models, as it were, as opposed to, and we all know the. I mean, Skeletrix, for much as we love them, that big crown wheel cover at the back, sort of thing that gets
yeah, yeah.
disguised or not. So we'd been able to do that sort of more scale. How did you select which cars were going to be the ones? Was it personal favourites, or was it like this is a GPS Lotus? Everybody's want one. And was it?
Yeah. So,
Um, sorry, on you go. Hap.
yeah, I mean, I guess there's several things there. One, you've got to go for a car that's famous. I'd modelled the Techno, and I was excited. I was excited about actually, that being on the shelf.
Yeah.
But it's not a famous car. I mean, Chris Amon drives it, but there's it's not a famous car. Nobody's going to want that. And so it's got to be a famous car, and it needs liveries because all the investment in the engineering to get that first model on the shelf, that's all loss. You've
Mm,
got several years of loss making investment. It's the launch of a brand. Polycar was a new brand at the time for Maurizio that he coupled with this kind of retro 70s Formula One because Polycar, is the Scalextrics of Italy.
mm,
And everyone would have been racing the Formula One cars in the 70s and they'd have had the sets just like we've got the Scalextric sets. So he was tapping into the Italian nostalgia with that as well. So there's a massive amount of investment. You've got to go for a car that's got enough liveries that you're going to get payback.
mm.
And you very quickly, if you expecting to have club racing, you need at least 4 or 6 liveries before people can really race together. So, that's quite a long lead in, a lot of investment.
Mm.
So, Lotus 72 got to be one of the most famous Formula One cars. Obviously, there is the JPS livery, which wasn't the first car because you hold back a little bit. You get some of the first ones out, so people will kind of understand it, and then you go for the big splash. Um, and so the Lotus 72 was a kind of no-brainer. We then wanted cars that you could race together from the same era. So, like you'd have your set when you were a kid with 2 cars in it that were racing together on TV,
Hmm.
even if I couldn't see them. Um,
But I'm
we
just
want,
thinking the subliminal effect of that original set that you got, which had two 70s Formula One
oh,
cars, one of which was a GPS Lotus. It's not to be underestimated how influential these things are.
well, that's what Simon was saying. Just recently in one of your episodes, right? He was talking about the fact that it's all about selling those Christmas sets because you make an industry forever, not just for a day. Anyway,
Yeah, I think
so
yeah, it's easy for us. I mean, I think that just to emphasise that, but it's easy for us old, and I'll use the term that Gareth uses, beardy weirdies, who are we think we are the market because we're buying and we see ourselves about at swap meets and things, but really the bulk of these things have got to be sold to families who are buying it for the kids to sort of sow the seeds for the future. It's
absolutely,
we can't buy enough to keep it going. Anyway, yeah, they'll keep it going. So yeah,
yeah.
you've got your GPS, and then you're looking for a rival. All right.
Yeah, so we went for the March 701 because, again, there are a lot of liveries on that.
Yeah.
But also, it was contemporary with the Lotus 72. And actually, in its first season, it did surprisingly well. March kind of arrived on the scene. They were everyone thought they were flash in the pan. They were never going to go anywhere. And I think they won their second race and got pole position in their first, because Jackie Stewart had one. He was running one with Tyrrell. So, there was a lot of interest in it. In its day, it was quite an exciting car, and it looked very different from the Lotus 72. So that was a no-brainer.
Mhm.
By then, between the two, you've got something like 12, 15 liveries. So, you've got years of potential sales there and really interesting, colourful grids. And then, of course, you know, Polycar is Italian. We had to go for the Ferrari. So we went for that Ferrari 312 B2. And again, we would all have loved to go for the 312B from 1970 because it's a beautiful looking car, but it's just really one car.
Yeah.
You're not gonna make enough money out of that. So the 32B2 has a couple of different changes. It's got the kind of the big snowplow nose. It's got these weird end plates. It's got 3 different rears. So I ended up modeling like 3 of every object on that car in order to get all the versions. But if you do that up front and they mold it just once, they just make the mold once, the fact that there's 3 bodies inside is, it's pennies for them. As long as you do it up front. If you do it later, then it's a whole new mold, a whole new injection, and then it's a lot of money. So yeah, we got that. And, again, there's 6 or 7 cars out of that. So suddenly you've got, up to like 20 cars out of 3. And so they're the kind of decisions we were making. It's got to look good. It's got to be famous enough. And it's got to have lots of liveries. So, yeah.
So, so all of that, the seeds of what we're still seeing now, basically, were sown way back then, right? Because, we're still seeing those cars.
Yeah. So that was 2013. We made the contract. First cars came out. Can't remember exactly now. 14 or 15 was it? It's 10 years ago now. It's pretty exciting to see. I go to Polycar races, as you know, like the Gaydon one. I go to Polycar races, and everyone's racing cars that I helped into the world, and for me, it's just so much pride. It's just so exciting. I just love it.
I can imagine. I mean, you are the last. I mean, the question I have for guests these days is, which is I'll ask it, but there's no point in asking it, which is, what's the car which you'd like to see that you think nobody would ever make? But you've made them. You brought them into being. But we'll come back to let that kind of percolate in the back of your head for a while, which is. But in terms, so. Obviously, one of the things, and I've met Maurizio a few times because he came over for the Toyota events way back when, so I got to know him a bit then. And I don't know whether how true it is, but of course his answer to what does he collect is only 6-wheel Formula One cars.
Yeah,
so, which is a very clever thing to collect because there's not many of them, and I would imagine it keeps the shelf space to a minimum.
So you would think. I can tell you, he's got quite a few.
He's got a few. Well, that begs the question. So, I'm going to ask because I have to ask, but I don't expect an answer. Are we ever going to see a 6-wheel Polycar? And I don't mean
very, very tricky decision. I think we'd all like to see that. I think I obviously don't know, but I know that Maurizio has that as a kind of pet project that he would love to see come to fruition. I think it's a complicated thing to bring to the market because it would require completely re-engineering that rear end. I mean, he has built a sort of a special version, 3D printed it, where he's got lots of transfer gears, so the 4 wheels are driving. I've done one that's got a belt drive, so slightly different. So we both scratch built one on our own, but I don't know. It would be amazing, wouldn't it? It would be lovely.
Well, I think these are great examples. I think and this is true. I think most so failures effectively. The 6-wheeled March wasn't very good. The Jaguar XJ13 or XJR13, it never raced, but it was too late. Had it raced, it would have been embarrassing. But these things, if they last long enough and the history passes, everybody's, look at this, it's marvellous, isn't it? It's really exotic and exciting. So absolutely. I think the sort of although the 6-wheel cars were never raced, rear-wheel drive, the Tyrrells were, but I don't think there was any with 4 wheels at the back that ever actually raced. Those would be, although in historics, didn't they? The guys built up the March and raced it in the historics. But the
Williams as well, isn't there? WR8.
Yeah, but I don't think it never raced. So, but I somehow or other it lends them that kind of what if, what could have been, and that slightly exotic. Just it's another layer, that backstory that makes these things even more desirable.
Well, Scalextric did the 6-wheel Tyrrell, with the 4 at the front. and I'm sure they've sold a lot of them because it's such an icon, isn't it? It's really exciting.
So yeah, I think people see that oddball. There's a car with 6 wheels. How odd is that? Like I said, when they brought out Lady Penelope, so you never know what's coming. Now that the SPV is coming with, I don't know, the 8 axles. Who knows what we can? I'm looking forward to see how many of them are driven and how how it goes round the corner if it's got all those axles. That's a different story. I'm quite. So we've got about sort of 4 minutes to go with that one. So I will come. I'll come back to what car do you think you'd like to see but will never get made? But before that, what are you personally? What's on the modelling shelf desk at the minute? What are you working on?
So what am I working on at the moment? I'm actually building some McLaren M19As. They're from 1971 to 73. So I've completely made that in CAD, and I'm desperately trying to get Maurizio interested in doing that, as the next one. We've got a sort of agreement, but I think it just takes a long time to get these things to come to fruition. So that's one that I'm both building and I'd like to see come to fruition.
Right.
But it's not. It never will. It hopefully will.
It hopefully will, yeah. It hopefully will. Yeah. No, the criteria is what's the thing you want, which you just think no one's ever going to make that. And I have to kind of, on the basis that anybody could make anything, you of all people could make anything. I mean, you made a techno for God's sake. So, I'm thinking mainstream kind of reasonable volume manufacture. What do you think is the thing you'd love to see, which would just never?
Tricky. I'd like to see one of the 1969 4-wheel drive cars. I'd like to see someone tackle that, and it could only really be Polycar, couldn't it? But I'd really like to see. There's some really weird cars there, and like the Lotus 63. Or there was a Matra MS08, I think, or was it the 10? Something like that would be really great.
There was a Cosworth, wasn't there? Cosworth actually.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever. I'm sure it didn't race, but it would. Yeah.
I built that, and I actually put 3 bull diffs in it, so it's 4-wheel drive with 3 bull diffs, and it makes a heck of a noise. And I have raced it competitively. Not very successfully, but obviously I'm not really a racer, so whatever I drive won't be very successful.
So, but that's part of the. I mean, it's just. I think. The bringing it to fruition, entering it in the race, whether it wins or not, is neither here nor there. You've achieved the thing.
Yeah. I think that's the parallel between you and I. I quite like pottering round more than really competitive racing.
Well, racing's great. I mean, I think I've often said, the first time you go into a club and there's a big 4 or a 6-lane track, and you see 3 or 4 cars sort of sliding round a corner together at the start of a race, it's amazing. If you've only been racing on your living room carpet up till that point, there's nothing quite as exciting as being at a club. And racing's fine. I maybe repeating myself because I'm old, but there's one of the guys I see it locally. Josh, who's a very good racer, races at Moseley. And we were having a discussion the other week, and he kind of just looked at me like I was a really strange alien, and he said, "What, you just like watching them going round?" And I went, "Yeah." So that's what I do. That's what we're great. Listen, that's been really fantastic. Thank you. You're one of those great guests where I just say, "Tell us about yourself," and you talk for 40 minutes. It's great. I don't have to.
Sorry, a bit of a monologue there. Sorry about that.
No, fascinating stuff. And I haven't even asked you about running the races up at Gaydon, but maybe we'll do that another time. Andy, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking the time, because I know you, unlike me, you've got a job, so you have to squeeze these things in. So I appreciate it.
I'm honoured.
Hopefully, I'll see. Don't get away with you. Hopefully, we'll see you at probably maybe up at Gaydon or whatever, and we'll get a chance to see what pressure Maurizio into building that McLaren. All right, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you soon. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.